So for today's project, I'm going to show you a fast, easy home decorating project using just pieces of wood and metal lettering. So for today's project, you're going to need a paper trimmer, Mod Podge, a sponge brush, distressing ink, some decorative tacks, paper, a hammer, whatever you want to decorate your wood with, metal or vinyl will work. And I have 4 blocks that have been cut 4 inches long and they're 3.5 inches wide. So first, what you want to do after you cut your block of wood is obviously sand it, make sure the edges are smooth. We just used a 2x4 piece of wood and cut them into 4 inches. Then I sanded the edges and stained the sides and the back. Okay, so the first thing you want to do after sanding your wood and staining it would be to cut your pieces of paper using your paper trimmer. I cut them so that they're 4 inches long. By about 3.5 inches wide. To put on top of your block. I would recommend that you make sure that your paper fits, leaving a small edge. You don't want to have the paper right up against the edge, but in just a little bit. So as you can see, I'm going to need to trim this down a little bit more. Okay, so now that I've cut out my paper, I'm ready to attach the paper to the wood using Mod Podge and my sponge brush. Work from the inside out so that you don't get the Mod Podge gooped up on the edges. Make sure to press down around the edges and throughout to get all of the bubbles and make sure that the paper is smooth. And you're just going to do this with all 4 blocks. Okay, so now that the paper has been applied to the blocks and they've had a few minutes to dry, I'm going to take my distress ink with my sponge makeup applicator. I'm going to go around the edges to give it a distressed look. And I'm just going to do this around all 4 blocks. So now that I have distressed the edges of my blocks and I've allowed a few minutes for it to dry, I'm going to Mod Podge over the top of the paper. Make sure when you do this that you don't do too much. And that's when you're going to get a lot of bubbles. You really just need a thin coat, just enough to cover. And again, I always work from the inside out so that it doesn't get globbed up around the edges. Just want to smooth it on, and I always brush it the same way on all the blocks so that they look the same. You're just going to do this to all 4 and then allow a good amount of time for them to dry. Now that the Mod Podge has had enough time to dry, as you can see, it dried clear and it just gives it a nice finish and seals the paper so that the paper won't come off the block. Now that it's dried, I'm going to attach my metal pieces to the block. And to do this, I'm just going to use some decorative tacks. You can buy these at any craft store. want to just do this on all 4 blocks. So now the metal is attached, and you can embellish it or add any ribbon or anything you'd like to it just to add more, or you can leave it how it is. But that's it, you're finished. If you're interested in purchasing the metal from today's project, please visit my blog at www.wordswithstyle.blogspot.com. For tips on this project and other projects, please visit my blog at www.wordswithstyle.blogspot.com. Thank you.